In a world that can be challenging and at times unpredictable, it's hard to find moments to focus on what you need. Join Stephanie James on The Spark as she guides you to use your inner flame to ignite your best life. As a best-selling author, psychotherapist, transformational life coach, and international show host, Stephanie is dedicated to helping you create a life that takes you, your goals, and your passions to the next level, so you can live a life that is fully lit up and fully alive. She believes that your life is meant to be a beautiful expression of the things that light you up. That by living your dreams, you give permission to others to do the same. Are you ready to feel alive and inspired to fuel your dreams and put a fire behind your desires? Let's ignite a spark in one another that will illuminate the world. The Spark, with your host, Stephanie James, starts now.
Welcome to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. I hope that everyone has had just a wonderful and beautiful holiday, had special moments treasured with family, friends, loved ones, and just sending out lots of love and warmest wishes to everyone for this wonderful 2022 coming up, and really making this year a year for each one of you where you're looking at what is it that I want to create this year? What do I want to manifest? And really being able to focus on what it is I want to bring into the world. I think it's so important we acknowledge what we let go of, and hopefully what did we let go of in 2021, and really focusing this new energy on what do we want to bring forward. Our thoughts are so creative. And so this is our opportunity to create new things in the new year. And my guest tonight, Martin Rutte, is one of these people that I am just so inspired by. He's the author of the book, The Project Heaven on Earth, and he's also just a dynamic international speaker. He is the president of Livelihood, which is a management consulting firm. Just so excited. He's also the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work, and just honored to have him here on the show. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you, Stephanie. Delight to be with you. And Happy New Year. And you're right about your introduction. Let's have this be a heaven on earth year globally.
Yes. Yeah. And let's dive right in, Martin, to talk about that. First of all, I'm always curious how you came to that project. What was going on in your life before that, and what brought that into fruition for you?
Sure. So I'm a management consultant. I've worked with large corporations in the US and around the world: Sony Pictures Entertainment, Southern California Edison, Merrill Dow Consumer Pharmaceuticals, who else? Apple Computer. Excuse me, I've spoken 4 times at the Harvard Business School on the subject of vision. So I have a very traditional corporate consulting background, and most of which is focused on vision. And in the late 80s, I did some work and I began to think about the vision that people have for the kind of work they want. And it seemed to me that the thing that was missing in work was spirituality. Not spirituality like I've got the answer, I know what this is, and I'm going to try and shove this down your throat, but really an exploration of what it would mean to be spiritual at work. You know, because 30, 40 years ago, the only thing I could talk about at work was my career. And then we got into some of my personal stuff. I'm Black, I'm gay, I'm a woman, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug abuser. And every time one of those topics came up, oh, you can't talk about that, you can't talk about that. And then we found ways to talk about it, and we did. And it was useful for the individual and the enterprise. And so then I thought, what about spirituality? Couldn't we bring that in as an inquiry, not as a position? So that took a good 30 years to bring in. I was chair of a Center for Spirituality and Workplace at a business school in Canada, chair of the board, and I helped elicit conferences all around the world on the topic. So I'm into that field, and I'm going to do a talk in Santa Fe, New Mexico at a conference on spirituality and work. And I was sitting, excuse me, sitting there beforehand thinking, if every business in the world is spiritual, is that what you want? And I said, no, because if we could transform business, we could transform the world. And then this thought literally popped into my mind, oh, you mean heaven on earth. And my first reaction when I heard that was, oh my God, you can't say that. And I thought, well, why not? I can talk to you about hell on earth. That's permissible conversation. Why can't I talk to you about heaven on earth? So that began this inquiry that we're going to talk about in this interview about heaven on earth and how to have it show up for people, not again as a position, I know what it is and you don't, but really the methodology that I've discovered helps evoke the heaven on earth that's already living within you and makes that manifest in the world.
Beautiful. So I love that idea that one person doesn't have the truth. I mean, that's kind of the bent that you're talking about when you're talking about spirituality. And it's not that one guru or one leader holds the ultimate big T truth. It's that we actually hold that truth inside of us.
And to evoke that, that's the key word. When you evoke it, and I'll just go through with you how, so what I began to do was, so first of all, what does that mean? What am I talking about, heaven on earth? I had no idea. And I'm not a big reader. So I thought, well, why don't I just start going around and talking to people and asking, what's heaven on earth for you? What's heaven on earth for you? What's heaven on earth? Over and over and over. And I began to see very clearly, Stephanie, these what I call gateways and a very dramatic and direct way in. Now, we didn't rehearse this at all, but are you willing for me to ask you my 3 heaven on earth questions?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So these are the questions that were distilled after asking these hundreds and hundreds of people. So question number 1, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on?
For me, I would say the very first time I really was aware of what I would call heaven on earth is when I was scuba diving. And so all I could hear was my regulator, just the bubbles coming up and just witnessing all this incredible beauty. It was a dive in Maui and just seeing, I mean, gorgeous, whether it was eel or we saw an octopus and these giant sea turtles. And I thought, this is bliss. It was quiet. It was I use that expression actually all the time when I say, I know where heaven on earth is, and it's 65 feet under the water, in the ocean. So that would be my answer for that.
Very good. All right. Second question. Imagine, I don't have one here with me. Let me just imagine you had a magic wand. Imagine you have a magic wand, and with it, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you?
I think heaven on earth for me would, first of all, it would probably start with having, honestly, our climate balanced,
So, shift the language a little bit from it would be to it is. Heaven on earth is.
Yeah. So if heaven was happening on earth right now, nature and earth would be in total balance. And we would have peace, throughout the world. And so, and this equality, and honestly, to me, this just might sound so far out. I'm just, telling you this off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I would love us, like, we moved away from just a monetary system to where it was actually people were able to bring whatever their gifts were out, and that we were able to share that with one another. And I know we have to make money and there's business and all that, but somehow there's just this beautiful flow between people, and where children would be nurtured to express their greatest gifts and their inner genius. And we had a society that really revered its elders. And so, we'd sit and again, this is heaven on earth for me, that we would sit in wisdom circles where we were learning from one another and reverence for the earth, nature, and each other.
Beautiful. Next question. What simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours to have more of that?
I think, for me, that would start with, to me, it's always like random acts of kindness, and because I really have a belief in what we do radiates out from us, and it's like concentric circles that spread through the world. So I think in the next 24 hours, it's simple things of spreading that, like buying the coffee for the person behind me in line, doing that thoughtful text or phone call, or reaching out so that people don't feel so alone. And really being conscious about how I want to communicate to those people around me that I really love and care for, that I do, so that they really know that they're loved.
Very beautiful. Let's go through the 3 questions again. Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. You went right to Maui, right to the scuba session. I was there with you. I could see it. I could feel. What you did not do, and what no one does, Stephanie, is say, Martin, what do you mean by heaven on earth? So I have not defined it for you. I just said, recall a time, and boom, you went right to it. And it's because you have in you what I call the already knowing about what heaven on earth is. And you scan your life and go, oh yeah, the time when I was in Maui scuba diving. So point 1, you do know. Yeah, and you've had at least one experience. Second question, here's a magic wand, and with it, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth? And you went right to it, the environment, peace, people looking after each other, the circles, a new monetary regimen for the world. You knew. And pre-COVID, when I used to do, live in-person sessions, people would stand up and talk about what heaven on earth is for them. And it's incredible how everybody knows. I mean, I do the same thing on Zoom now. Everybody knows. And then the third question, I don't want to just leave it like that with you. I want to actually have you engage with it. And you said, doing stuff that would pay it forward, telling people in my life that I love them. So we do know what heaven on earth is. We have had an experience of it. And if we say so, if we commit and we say, okay, I'm in, I'm going to start co-creating heaven on earth on a daily basis. The third question is interesting. What simple, easy, concrete step will you take? That question has a lot of power, because it's asking you, what's the simplest thing you can do? Well, I can pay it forward. Good, do that. Whatever it is, do that. Then you'll be in by your definition.
I love that. I love that, because it empowers each one of us then to start creating it. And, I love it, the charge of it being in the next 24 hours.
Yes.
So the time being now,
Yep.
The essence of, it's like, if not now, then when?
Jewish philosophy, that's right. And if not me, who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and so how long has this project for you been going on, and what are you seeing as you're working with all of these thousands of people as a result of these questions?
Going on around 30 some years. And I think at a more meta level, what we're doing is we're co-creating the new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. And what I want to do in a moment, I don't know where we are in the first section here, but we can go into a couple of examples in depth, because there's hundreds of people around the world who are now doing this and who've discovered. I'll just tell you a couple, and when we come back, we can do some more. Yeah. But a woman in Portugal has translated my website, projectheavenonearth.com, into Portuguese, ser na terra. My Portuguese is not great. For the 250 million Portuguese-speaking people in the world. A newspaper in Dehradun, India, they interviewed me, and at the end of the interview, he's the publisher editor. I said, well, what will you do for heaven? Well, I don't know, what can I do? I said, well, you run a newspaper. Oh yeah. So every issue of this newspaper, it's called the Dehradun Street, it's online now because of COVID, in capital letters across the top of the masthead, Dehradun, a heaven on earth city. Now imagine everybody in the city of Dehradun seeing that and seeing that and seeing that and seeing it over and over and over again to normalize what our heart and soul's desire is. We do, I assert, want heaven on earth. Who wants the wars and the hunger and the environmental situation and COVID? Yes, there might be some crazies who do want that, but the vast majority of the world wants a healthy, operating heaven on earth. Well, isn't it now time to start saying that? I realize it's a bold statement, and I mean it to be a bold statement. And I also mean it to say that you can have your unique part in having this be made real starting today.
Yes. Yes. So if people want to learn more about it, we're going to take a break in just a minute. Where can they go so that they can really answer these questions for themselves? And
they can go to projectheavenonearth.com. You'll see the 3 questions there. You can sign up for a free 7-day course. You'll get a free blog after that. And when we come back, I want to talk about the book, Project Heaven on Earth.
Yes, wonderful. So it is projectheavenonearth.com.
Yep.
And sign up, do the questions. I just signed up for the e-course myself today. I'm so excited to get that. And when we come back, more with Martin Rutte. So stay tuned. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James, and I've been talking with Martin Rutte about his project Heaven on Earth, the book, and his amazing work in the world, asking people 3 simple questions, which helps generate these answers from within about how we can actually create this heaven on earth, and that it starts inside each one of us, and we can start manifesting it right now. So, Martin, we had just started talking about some examples of how this is, this 30-year project, what you've seen start happening in the world. And can you tell us some other examples of how you've seen this manifest?
I will. Before I do that, I want to do something a little tricky with you here, but you'll see in a moment where I'm after. Tell me the title of the book.
Project Heaven on Earth.
There's another embedded title in the same title. Do you see that? No, it's not a video.
Oh,
Project Heaven on Earth.
Oh, project. Yes. Wow. Okay.
So the word project is both a verb, to project it as in a state of being, and a noun, project. You and I are working on this project together. Yeah. And so what I've discovered with what people have been doing is that their being wants heaven on earth and their doing wants heaven on earth. So some examples. There's a woman, Susan Alima Fryer in Hawaii, and she teaches people how to grow microgreens, little green plants about this big. It takes, I think, 10 days. And then you grind them all up and you drink them, and they're very, very healthy. So I'm leading a seminar in Hawaii, and I said, "What's your project?" "My project? "Well, I don't know. I can't do anything." I said, "Well, what do you do in microgreens?" And then I said, "Well, what's heaven on earth for you?" And in essence, what she's saying, Stephanie, is heaven on earth for me is reconstituting the Garden of Eden. So she has put that, she's embedded that, what heaven on earth is for her, into, get this, every email. So she asks the second heaven on earth question. Imagine you have a magic wand, and with you can have heaven on earth. What is heaven on earth for you? Here is what it is for me. That's embedded now in every email that she sends out. Simple, easy, concrete action. A woman in Mexico City smiles at 2 people every day. That's her heaven on earth project. Now, here's what's interesting. Suppose that she smiles at 2 people a day, and each of them smiles at 2 people a day, and so on and so on. So your job is to only smile at 2 people today who have never been smiled at. And there's 7.8 billion people in the world. And let's suppose for a moment that everybody did that. How long do you think it would take for the whole world to get it?
Gosh, I don't know. Probably a very short period of time.
Years, century, eons, millennia, 32 days.
I love that.
Because it's compound 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 1 to 64 and so on and so on. So that's hers. We have a woman, a real estate agent in Halifax, Brenda McKenzie. We were having coffee one day and she said, and I said, is there a suffering in the world that really bothers you? Because that's one of the gateways into heaven on earth. We'll talk about the gateways. Yes, homelessness. And she went white. I could see the shock in the mention of the word homelessness. She's in real estate. So what's heaven on earth for homelessness? Well, obviously a home for everyone, but that's impossible. I'm a real estate agent. I work 80 hours a day, 8 days a week. I'm in a relationship you don't understand, blah, blah, blah. Fine. What are you going to do? Oh, she sets up this program called A Home for Everyone, in which she asked each of the agents in her office to donate $25, I think it was, from every sale up to $1,200 a year. They've raised in the years $400,000. Every year, they have members of the community, either individuals or group, approach them with a proposal. Here's how we're going to create a home for everyone. Simple, easy. A police officer in Texas has created a 16-page manual called Heaven on Earth for Law Enforcement. Because I asked him the question, what's heaven on earth for policing? And he said, well, obviously the end of crime and everybody working together. And like that, he got it. And I said, what are you going to do about it? So he created this manual. I told you about the newspaper in Dehradun, India. Let me think. Oh, another woman in Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia, also in Canada. We're on a web call and we were talking about the sufferings in the world. And I'll tell you a suffering, violence against women. I mean, she was so furious. I've been to the police. I've been to the government. Nothing. What would you do? Well, I don't know, Susan, I don't know your financial situation. You could donate $5,000. You could donate a penny. Well, what difference would a penny make? One of the women on the call said, wait a minute. What if everybody in your county donated a penny a day to help end violence against women? She went, oh my God. They created a program called Making Change, in which they handed out little mason jars with a picture of a woman, half her face beaten up, bruised, half her face bright, alive with the light shining out. And they asked people, get this, to donate a penny or more a day for a year. You couldn't put in $3.65. No, a penny, because they wanted that consciousness. They raised in 2 counties $2,500. They took that result to the government of Canada, which has a group called Status of Women, who gave them $100,000 for each of the subsequent 3 years. From it's impossible, there's nothing we can do about it. A penny a day. Let me see what else. Oh, a therapist is now using Heaven on Earth for couples therapy. What's Heaven on Earth for the woman, for the relationship, and what's Heaven on Earth for the man or gay, whatever, the partners? What's Heaven on Earth for you for the relationship? So they're forced in a good way to think about what it is for them. And then one of the big ones we've done is, I'm talking to you now from Prince Edward Island, Canada, which is a province. It's the smallest Canadian province, and it's actually the birthplace of Canada. So it has a very important role in the psyche of the country. I was doing a Heaven on Earth conference here, and I was talking, and all of a sudden this thought came into my mind. Prince Edward Island is Canada's first Heaven on Earth province. I dismissed it. Again, Prince Edward Island is Canada's first Heaven on Earth province. I dismissed it 3 times. Okay, I get the message. So we've created a group here called Prince Edward Island, Canada's first Heaven on Earth province. And a cafe has created a blend of coffee called Heaven on Earth. A tea merchant has blended a tea called Heaven on Earth coffee, a tea. A jewelry store has handed out cards with each of my 3 questions to over 10,000 clients who've come in to buy jewelry from this particular woman. I've just done an 8-week program with a a group of Catholic nuns, the Sisters of St. Martha, on Heaven on Earth. That was amazing. I volunteer at a drug and rehab, alcohol rehab center once a week, talking about heaven on earth. Because once I'm off booze, once I'm off drugs, what am I going to do with my life? It's always been about me. Well, now that's stopped. Now what? So I'm giving them that option of going forth. And I think the most amazing thing, 3 years ago, I interviewed each of the 4 political party leaders on this province, asking them the 3 questions that I just asked you, and what is heaven on earth for Prince Edward Island? Each of them answered that question, and we made that into a video. As far as I know, that is the first time in the world that all political parties in one jurisdiction have talked about what heaven on earth is and what they're going to do about it.
How powerful. I think about, wow, if that's what all of our political leaders were doing, if those were the conversations that we were having, like truly, because at that point, it doesn't matter what political party you represent. It's how do we create this collective good? How do we create for everyone, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, political views? What does heaven on earth look like? How do we start manifesting that?
And the last part, regardless of political views. So a party on the left, the New Democratic Party or the Green Party, a centrist party, the Liberal, and a party on the right, the Conservative Party. Leaders of all 4 spoke about what it would. Now, clearly they come at it from a different way, but they weren't there to make the other guy wrong. They were there to share what their truth was. And that's, for me, the power. Now, I want to just continue from embedding it in an email all the way up. A woman in Austria, Elizabeth Ziegler, who's just amazing. I was doing an online seminar, and what's your project, Elizabeth? She said, oh, Austria is a heaven on earth nation. And I went, what? Where did you get that from? And she was like, well, because it's simple. She taught me the value and the power of the word simple. I don't know what the simple action is that you can take, but you do. And once you start to take that, then you're in the arena. So it could be embedding an email, a police officer, as I spoke about, the real estate agent. We have a man from the country of Gabon, Africa, now living in Montreal. When I did a webinar and he was in, he went, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for. His project is called Africa, a heaven on earth continent. Stunning, stunning. So we have no idea what the simple is, but you do. And so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, this is an interesting exercise to see how all of this is actually making itself real in the world. If you go to Google and in quotes, put heaven on earth, and then outside the quotes, put 2020, and then again put in quotes, heaven on earth, and then outside the quotes, 2021, it's roughly 4.7 to about 8 point something million results, not all mine, but in a 47% increase. I did this about 3 weeks ago. I'll do it again on January the 1st. Or actually today I have to, well, no, tomorrow I have to do it, right, to see what the year is. But the growth in the number of results when you look at the phrase heaven on earth year over year is dramatic. I think that what's going on, Stephanie, is that underneath the turmoil of the ocean of COVID and the environment, and God forbid, the threat of nuclear weapons, there's something arising in the human spirit that says, we don't want to play this game anymore the way we've been playing. We want, and let me just put it out there, we want heaven on earth. Okay, it's time. Let's go for it. Let's do it. And you have a unique role to play that only you can play.
And that's such an essential message that I think people need to hear, that they are essential components in contributing to creating this, each and every one of us.
And I would add just a little slight shift on the verb, creating and co-creating.
Yeah. Yes. Love that.
Once you realize that, yes, you are doing it the phrase I have is you have to do it by yourself and you can't do it alone.
Mhm.
That's
Love
my
that.
phrase about it.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, and how wonderful to be co-creators with one another and co-creators with the universe. I mean, that's what's so exciting about this.
It's
Um,
co-creation in a whole, yeah, co-creation with yourself, with another, with others, with the divine God, the universe. Yes, and now's the time. 5 or 10 years ago, we heard this phrase. You remember, Steph? The current story is not working. The current story is not working. We need a new story. We need a new story.
mhm.
But then you stopped hearing that language. And I think the reason you stopped hearing that is because nobody named the new story. So if I say to you, Stephanie, our relationship is not working, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working, but I don't put a context on what it would take for us to work, nor do you, then it's a source of frustration and we drop it. Instead, I'm suggesting that if you choose, you name it, okay, I'm participating, I'm co-creating heaven on earth. Now, take a simple step that will start moving you there, knowing that there are thousands and thousands of people around the world who are doing the same.
And so that is so powerful. And I have to tell you, Martin, I really resonated when you were talking about the woman who's a therapist, because I'm a psychotherapist as well. And thinking about doing that with couples when they come into my office, the first thing, and I'm going to start tweaking it now, but the first thing I always ask them is to visualize what they want it to look like. What do they want the relationship to look like, let's say in 6 months or a year? Well, that's what this is. This is focusing on what we want to see, not what we don't want to see, which seems like that's the easy thing to jump on the fear-mongering bandwagon.
Yes, exactly. We know we cannot have heaven on earth. We've proven that. Thank you very much. Now let's prove the new one. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
It's deeper. It's what your soul wants, what your divine soul wants. That's where this enters. I thought people kept saying to me, can't you use a word like vision instead of heaven? No, it's not, because it's not imposing a definition of heaven. It's evoking a definition of heaven that your soul already knows. When you get in touch with that, what I've done seminars, it was mostly women start crying, and I've had women sobbing, because all of a sudden the realization, something that I've suppressed can now be talked about and engaged with and made real in the world. Wow.
Wow. So powerful. I'm so excited to continue this conversation. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, even more with Martin Rutte. Come back and join us here on The Spark. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. Find out more about the exciting events that are happening and ways that you can ignite sparks in your own life by going to my website, stephaniejames.world. You'll find speaking events, public events that are happening, my new film, When Sparks Ignite. You can see a trailer there, and sign up for a free 20-minute exploratory belief busting session with me. And it's really a breakthrough session where you can break through limiting beliefs, and we can talk about how to move your life forward in 2022 in the most positive direction. Again, www.stephaniejames.world. I'm back here with Martin Rutte, and Martin is a dynamic international speaker. We've been talking about Project Heaven on Earth and this beautiful play on words, which is also Project Heaven on Earth, which I love that. And Martin, talk to us a little bit about this concept of heaven. You were just saying in the previous segment how heaven can be kind of a loaded word. And so people have different impressions of what that means. What did you find out about the definitions of heaven?
So when I started this, Stephanie, it was interesting because the phrase that I used was heaven on earth. And what I began to see was, I know what on means. I know what earth means. well, what's heaven? So I started going around asking, what's heaven? What's heaven? What's heaven? And what was fascinating to me was people's idea that heaven is the place you go after death. It's upstairs. It's where God and the angels are. But it's, if you look underneath all of that, it's not here, not now. And that struck me as very fascinating. Part of that came from in around the 1500s, before the telescope was invented. People thought that heaven really was about a foot off the ground and just continued up, that we were in essence in heaven. Then Galileo invents the telescope. They look up. There's no angels. They don't see God. They don't see angels. So clearly heaven's not here. It's got to be somewhere farther up there. Thus was born the notion of heaven after death, which is fine. But the fact that it's then left out of here implies that, well, then we can have war, we can have environmental destruction. That's fine, because this is not heaven. Yes, there's good stuff. Stephanie and I went out for lunch today and it was wonderful and da, 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 da. But I mean, really, you can't have heaven on earth. So not here, not now. And I wanted to bust that, because that allows you to not engage with making this and experiencing both this as heaven on earth. All right, so that was a major insight for me. Then I began to ask these three heaven on earth questions of people, and I began to see what I call the gateways. That is, when you ask people where, you have a magic wand, what is heaven on earth? The second question. There are 8 different gateways, and so we'll go over each one. The first is, and this is in no order. So the first is in here. There are people who say, heaven exists within me. The more I can bring that out, the more heaven there will be for me and for the world. And so there's 2 things you do. One is you just talked about it. I go to therapy with you. I look at all the stuff in my life that is not heaven, with the intention of clearing it out so I can experience more heaven. And or I go and do things that give me the experience of heaven on earth. In your case, it would be swimming, scuba diving in Maui. For me, it's printmaking or eating raspberries or looking in my wife's eyes. Both. So that's one gateway, internal. So the book, Project Heaven on Earth, goes through the 3 questions. It's on Amazon, the book, and then goes through the gateway so you can begin to see which of these gateways resonate with you. Because once you're finished the book, what I want you to do is come up with your own project and begin to engage in that. The project by your own definition. So one is one gateway internal. Then we begin to move out. And we, we look at relationships. We talked about that earlier, relationship with myself. Are there things within me that are not heaven on earth or that are heaven on earth? What do I do? Relationships with another, with you, Stephanie, with other people. Stephanie and I have a bad relationship. Okay, how do I clean that up? Stephanie and I have a good relationship. How do I get more of that? And relationship with the divine. Then we look at values. There are people who say, for example, my wife's global value is joy. When she walks into a room, you are going to feel joy. My friend Tim, his is order. He can walk into a pigsty of an office and he'll know how to clean it up. And when he's done, there's order and harmony. Mine is harmony. That word is, just even saying that word to you, my head starts to spin. It's that powerful. Then there are people, so we've moved from inner to relationships, and now we're going outer. And what's outer? Well, one outer is ending a suffering, hunger, war, poverty, economic strife, environment, homelessness, disease. If this is your gateway, there's usually one suffering that is what I call the keystone suffering. There is one suffering that, for example, I spoke in the previous section about Brenda McKenzie and a home for everyone. Homelessness, that was the key suffering for her. And the keystone, in an arch bridge, at the top, there's a keystone. If you take that out, the whole bridge collapses. So for those people who think that a suffering particular suffering is their keystone suffering, they feel that removing that suffering from the world will destroy all sufferings. They'll just collapse. Moving further out into the world, institutions. What if the institutions of the world took their rightful place in co-creating heaven on earth? What if the purpose of government was to co-create heaven on earth? The purpose of healthcare, the purpose of law, the purpose of religion. What if the purpose of an institution was to help co-create heaven on earth? Then we move even further out to nations. I spoke earlier about Elizabeth, whose purpose is Austria, a heaven on earth nation, or a group of nations. Charles Choré, Africa, a heaven on earth continent. And the final one is this here now, that this here now is heaven on earth, but our belief that it's not prevents us from seeing that it is. So those are the 8 gateways that pretty consistently come up. So people might have 1 or 2 or 3, but they don't usually have 8, but they'll be 1 or 2.
How do we move towards 8? What if we want all 8?
No one's asked me that question before. I think the first thing is you get into partnership, into co-creation with others.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been saying is find others who share the same gateway as you and start, expanding that. But I love your question, Stephanie, seriously, that what if you had a group of 8 who, and each one had, through their own resonance, one of the gateways, the 8 gateways in Project Heaven Earth. I love that idea. I love that idea.
Talk about sitting in wisdom circles.
Yeah.
It's what could we co-create if we were in circles of 8?
Lynn McTaggart does that. I forgot the title of her book. Yeah, but about 8, the power of 8. So here we are.
Here you are. Wow.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's a brilliant question. Thank you. I really never, and so I've been doing this for 30, 35 years now. And what's interesting to me is I can continually see its growth. And your question indicates to me that it's the next level of growth. How do we co-create all 8?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and now I'm going to take it actually down to a little more micro level, Martin, for you. How have you experienced heaven on earth? And maybe what does that mean to you now?
Yeah,
as it may have evolved?
It's definitely evolving. That is for sure. When I started it, as I said, my first reaction, when I heard the phrase in my head, I thought, oh my God, you can't say that. So it started from that to now it's just normal. It's like drinking a glass of water. And so part of the process as you get into heaven on earth is it goes from it's completely impossible and stupid and unrealistic because we've never had it before to, well, it's an interesting idea, to a possibility, to a potential, to you're starting to act on it, to it becomes normalized. I envision this time when I'll get on a plane, sit down beside someone I don't know, and we'll go through the what do you do, what do you do? And then the second question will be, and what are you doing to help co-create heaven on earth? And we'll both have answers. When I was a kid, I remember sitting on the front porch of my house reading, I think I would read two newspapers every day. I knew that I was here to change the world. And, where I grew up, that was crazy. I mean, nobody talked about that stuff. But when I heard heaven on earth and I saw how it fit into the progression of my life, it was like, that's it. Not like that was it. That was it. I knew that was the next phase of my life very clearly. And so for me, heaven on earth is people getting the heaven on earth that is within them, that their divine soul resonates with, and acting on that. And that is the story, the growing, expanding story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. That's the game that I'm in. Mm-hmm. So those numbers that I quoted to you earlier about heaven on earth 2020 and heaven on earth 2021, or whenever you're watching this, use this year versus last year, the growth is dramatic. and other words like paradise, utopia, all those words are growing in numbers on Google because it's tapping into this emerging force and desire, deep soul desire, that COVID, the silver lining of COVID, I mean, we don't want COVID, but the silver lining, given that it's here, is that it's making us go deeper into, well, what kind of world do we want? And let's make that real. And I'm suggesting it's heaven on earth.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, when you just said that about COVID, you know, also being a gift, and not that, of course, again, we would ever want it. I think it's caused us to go within. And so maybe creating some of that heaven on earth, having to look at our own stuff at a very micro level, and then seeing, okay, what do I need to clear out to become a clearer conduit, so that, like you were saying, so we're experiencing that inner heaven. And then, yes, how can we start co-creating that? Because we want to see that in our world. We want our world to look different. We want to experience life differently.
I was reading the paper a couple of days ago, and this was the headline on one of the.
Oh, great.
It's a dream. And I cut that out because it's like, that's it. That's it. It's a dream. When I first heard the phrase heaven on earth, I knew, instantly knew, that's it. That's the next phase of my life.
Well, and so I guess here's the question then for me, that begs to be asked, is then what's next for you?
I'm working on a new book called Paradise Found.
Oh, I love it.
I'm interested in the progression of heaven on earth to paradise, to what I then call the glory or illuminating splendor. And that we have entered the era of God. That's not imposing that. It's that our divine souls are saying, okay, it's time for a new story here. And so paradise is the next iteration of that progression.
Fantastic. I'm so curious about, you know, collective consciousness. And as you're talking about, you know, the divine being more present, I also think about the momentum, Martin, of this what I learned from my good friend Stephanie Schwartz, is that when 10% of any cohort changes, whether it's a school, a community, a business, a nation, the whole cohort has to adjust. So that there is power, again, in each one of us as individuals, starting to create this heaven on earth, starting to create a paradise.
What's interesting, Stephanie, is we forgot our divine agency. We forgot through declaration and through action and through a releasing. And I love your igniting our souls, that it is a human evolution, and that we're entering, we can see that we're entering this, we're in what's called for me the liminal period, liminal from the doorway, that we're not in the previous room and we're not in the next room. We're completely in the doorway now. So the old rules, yes, some of them apply, and we're kind of stepping into the new world. And that's where we are. And this work on Heaven on Earth, and then Project Heaven on Earth and Paradise Found, is for me my exploration of it, because I'm learning. I mean, the question you asked me earlier, no one ever asked me that, so that's 30 years later, so still something new. And the same with Paradise Found. It's an inquiry, it's an exploration of the expression of our divine soul collectively.
Yes.
And it's the we that's needed. One of the things I've been looking at, I has gone too far over the line. I is narcissistic. We need I get that. Excuse me. But we also need a healthy I within a healthy we. When we looked at COP26, the environmental conference, that's our one of our initial attempts to have we solve a problem. So we're young at that. And we need to move pretty quickly and not only give birth to we, but have we be effective.
Yes. And as you say that too, I'm reminded of Michael Bernard Beckwith, who was in the movie The Moses Code. And on the outtakes of that film, they had panels of all the guests that were in the film and people being able to ask them questions. And someone asked Michael Bernard Beckwith, what do you think about the second coming? And he said, the second coming, I believe, is not going to be an individual. It's going to be a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And I have absolutely, I mean, this has been over a decade ago when I first saw that movie, and I just resonated so deeply with that it's bringing out the divine in all of us, that's inherent in us and between us. And it's I'm fumbling for words here, but it's the all, right? And it's as we come into that place of knowingness that we can be co-creators, what a powerful world that we can create of this, truly bringing heaven, bringing paradise to earth.
I have nothing to say. Maybe we'll do the fourth segment in silence.
We'll just
That'll drive the producer nuts.
Well,
there in Hinduism, there's some, I got to find the word. After you've talked and talked and talked and talked, you just come to silence.
Well, it's almost like when you speak all of it and then allowing it to assimilate and allowing what resonates to resonate. And I just have to thank you so much, Martin. This has been such a wonderful and inspiring conversation. And I know it will be for the listeners. I think there's no better time. We were saying there's no better time than now. There's no better time for this message than now. And there's no better people than each one of us to take that responsibility, to take that calling, take that charge and start creating this heaven on earth.
Yep, that's the game we're up to right now. That's exactly it. Stephanie, thank you. Great interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, and before we get off, let me ask you one more time, Martin, where can people find out more about the book, about getting in touch with you, about this amazing project?
So it's called Project Heaven on Earth. You can go online, look at projectheavenonearth.com, and you can sign up there for a free 7-day course on Heaven on Earth. And you'll also get a free weekly blog. The blog is important because it looks at heaven on earth from all different perspectives and it normalizes it. That's what's really important for me. Also, the book, Project Heaven on Earth, it's available on Amazon by Martin Rutte. There I am. Whoops, there I am. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you to buy 3 copies. One for you, one for somebody in your life right now, and who is that person, who needs it, who's that person, and one for somebody who's going to come into your life and you'll say, aha, it's for you. We have people who buy cases. I call it the case for Heaven on Earth. They buy 20 books. One woman in Florida is just amazing. She has a case in her car, and wherever she meets somebody, she just hands out a book. It's brilliant.
I love that. I think that was one of my greatest gifts through the Christmas season. Is a dear friend said, hey, Stephanie, I gave your book after I was done with it to a woman who was sitting at the bus stop who looked sad. And I felt like she needed it.
Lovely.
I mean, what a gift. I love that idea, Martin. Pick up 3 at least, and let's start co-creating heaven on earth. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks for tuning in to The Spark with Stephanie James. Remember that you already have what you need to live a life that is fully lit and fully alive. You're already holding the flame. Now it's time to ignite your best life. Learn more at stephaniejames.world. That's stephaniejames.world. And tune in next week at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on transformationtalkradio.com. Shine on!